Yeah, it was really scary kind of thinking these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, am I in the wrong career? Like, what do I do? What else am I good at? I don't actually know.
Welcome to the Career Flipper, the podcast about career changes and everything that comes with them. Each week, I chat with people from all over the world in all sorts of industries to uncover how they make the leap from point A to point B and everything in between. Together, we'll dive into the twists, turns, wins, and all the messy moments. I'm your host, Jenny Dempsey. After getting laid off and unexpectedly pivoting my own career from tech to furniture flipping, I couldn't stop wondering, how do people actually make these big career shifts? How do they keep going when things get really tough and you're scared? That curiosity sparked this podcast. We have a lot we can learn from one another. And if you love hearing career change stories or you're thinking about making a pivot yourself, hit subscribe. New episodes drop every Thursday. Today, I'm chatting with Angelique Beach. She made her career flip from nursing to starting her own professional organization business, Neatly, in San Diego, California. In the episode, she opens up about how she realized nursing wasn't her true calling, the steps she took to follow her passion of organizing, and the skills she brought along from her old career. From financial planning to finding the right clients, Angelique shares how she built a career that truly makes her happy. If you've ever felt stuck in a job that no longer fits or wondered how to organize a path towards something that truly lights you up, this episode will leave you feeling ready to sort through your own dreams and take action. Let's get into the conversation with Angelique now.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you and share with your listeners.
This is so cool. Just for everyone listening, so I stumbled across Angelique on Instagram and I love to organize things. I'm not necessarily the best. I think I'm still learning and figuring things out. So when I stumbled upon your business here in San Diego, I was looking to connect with other local business owners and found it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with the way that you organize things. Can we talk about the label maker? I'm still waiting to put that on my shop because that's a game changer, which you'll get into all the things in a little bit. But seriously, that is how we stumbled upon one another. And then I think there was a post where you shared maybe you used to do something else and how it got to this point. And I was like, oh my gosh, we need to talk. So that is
Oh
how
my
we
God.
connected.
I know it's so cool. And I'm so excited that you found me, especially on Instagram, because it is a platform where I do want to reach people in San Diego. I feel like our generation, at least, I don't know, me myself, when I moved to San Diego 6 years ago, I would be looking for a hairstylist and I'm very visual. So I want to see the work they're doing. So I would type in on Instagram or, Google, balayage hairstylist. So I'm excited that you were able to find me through that platform and, through a visual connection too.
Yes, I love it. And no, the things that you create and share, it's very easy to get an idea of how you do it, your style, and it just looks amazing. And it's so nice on the eyes. All the organization, like the before and after of a drawer, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in for it all. But
It's satisfying.
talk about that all day. Angelique, tell everybody who you are, what you do. Give everyone a high level of where you are at today before we dive into your career flips.
Sounds good. So, my name's Angelique. I live in San Diego, California. I was not originally from here. I was born in Puerto Rico. Then we went to the States when I was about four, and grew up in Florida pretty much my whole life. And I migrated out to California, honestly, because of my husband. But in the background, I had always had the dream of coming out here. So when I found out he lived here, I was like, oh, immediately going to, venture out there. So I've been living out here for 6 years now and just love the lifestyle. I'm very active, outdoorsy. We love, camping and nature and just doing things, being on the go. And California absolutely promotes that type of lifestyle. And I love like the wellness focus. So I have just been here since, and we've just kind of crept up the coast. So started down more in, Pacific Beach area, La Jolla, Carlsbad, kind of going up the coast. So
It's nice. Such a great place to live. Seriously, it's wonderful.
it's amazing. I'm like, how could anyone ever want to leave? I know it's expensive, but we call it the paradise tax, right?
Yep, yep, that's so funny. It totally is, and it's worth every penny.
Oh, yeah.
So you found your way to San Diego, and what happens? Like, let's just dive into the story. You're here. Were you doing something different career-wise before that allowed you to move? Yeah, just kind of go into
Yeah.
your story.
Yeah, I'll go into the full depth of it. So, in Florida, I went to school for a bachelor's in nursing. And I worked as a nurse for about 2 years on the field in labor and delivery, postpartum. I was doing night shift. It was hard. It was really challenging. I would say easily one of the to this date, one of the hardest jobs I think I've ever done in my life. Absolutely rewarding and beautiful. And like, birth is such a miracle. So it was amazing. But I remember so clearly it was the night of my 25th birthday. I call it a quarter life crisis because I'm like, I was on night shift. I'm, at work and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not happy. This is killing me. I'm only, what, a year and a half in? What am I doing wrong? So I literally started researching the Peace Corps. What else did I look up? Oh, I was like, should I be a flight attendant? Because I love traveling. And I was just kind of trying to tune into things that I personally love to do. And anyways, I ended up landing on, oh, let me further my education and become a nurse practitioner. So, I vigorously applied. And to kind of go into further depth, actually, in nursing school was tough. And I kind of overloaded myself thinking I could do, however many credits all at once. And to be honest, I failed a class. And that, A, for me at the time was super traumatic because then I constantly went into more classes thinking, oh, am I going to fail this one? Da, 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 da. And, I came out okay. Like, I was one of those students who was like an A and B student. I had to work for it. Like I wasn't just natural like my sister. So that was super traumatizing. And the thought of like going back to school initially when I got out, I was like, no, absolutely not. So that's why it took me a little bit of time, but it just kind of felt like the natural path and like the natural direction of like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to be a bedside nurse. Maybe I want a little more autonomy and to kind of like advocate for my patients. And so I went to school. I was fearful about getting in and I really wanted to get into like a good, reputable program. So I applied, I mean, everywhere, and I ended up getting in and going to the University of Miami. It was an amazing program. It was an accelerated program, so it was really rigorous, like 1 full year of just basically eat, breathe, sleep, school. Um, and I did great. It was awesome. Honestly, I hate to say it, but grad school was almost easier than nursing school. It was an interesting thing. But anyways, I graduated, became a nurse practitioner, and then I moved out to California, immediately took my boards, and then just started applying for jobs. Got my first job in primary care. It was good. I was excited and hungry and just like, oh my gosh, like I'm treating this as a residency, basically working, you're getting paid 8 to 5, but then I would work till 7 p.m. just because I wanted to learn more, read up on charts, kind of just trying to give my patients my all, just because I was like, I want to be, when I put my heart into something, I want to be the best I can possibly be and make sure I'm serving the people correctly, rather than just like not giving it my all. So yeah, so I ended up I was a nurse practitioner. I am a nurse practitioner for now 6 years, which is crazy because time absolutely flies. I have tried various specialties. So I did primary care. Right when COVID started, I hopped over to like an urgent care type setting. So that was really interesting. We were telemedicine for a little bit and then we went back in person, and COVID was just lots of anxiety behind it on both fronts for the healthcare providers, for patients. So that was an interesting time. Then the reason I kept switching around was because I'm like, not loving the schedule. Like Monday through Friday, I'm working and I have to take time off to go to a dentist appointment. Like I should be using my time off for, recuperating and rejuvenating myself, not going to doctor's appointments or dentist appointments or whatever. So that started to bother me a little bit, not to mention like I was just burning myself to the ground with working, 50 to 60 hours a week and all that. So that's why I kept, floating around, trying different schedules out. Maybe the urgent care, 12-hour shifts, 3 days a week. Maybe that would work. even that, like working weekends and holidays, like I really value family and time with people. You don't get that back. And I don't care how much money you get paid for working an overnight, extra shift. To me, it's not worth it. So anyways, I got to the point where I ended up doing the last job as a nurse practitioner that I was doing prior to doing my career flip was telemedicine for a company. And I just didn't love how their focus was on money. It was all on money. It's not about the patient anymore. And I feel like when I went into healthcare, the idea was like, we're going into this to help people. I'm not going into it for a paycheck or whatever. But so that got me thinking a lot. The other thing that got me thinking is I do come from a family of everybody's a physician. So naturally, it felt like, okay, I need to go into healthcare. Like, yes, I like helping people. And, ever since I can remember, I think I was like in grade school, and I would be volunteering at the Ronald McDonald House at our local hospital and helping with kids. And I loved kids. I like nannied all through college. So I have always been exposed to healthcare and kind of just felt like, oh, this is my calling. That's what I'm supposed to do. And then when I got into it, I'm like, I don't know that I actually did this for me. I think I did this for my family to kind of like please other people. And, you will always have a job in healthcare for the most part. So it was more like, I really felt like I was doing it just because it was like the waves just taking me that way. Um, Rather than kind of like, oh, I'm doing this because I know I love it. And I felt really conflicted having these thoughts because, coming from a Hispanic family who's very much like, oh, they want to see you successful and they want you to be able to support yourself. And my dad's motto was like, I want you to grow up and I don't want you to have to rely on anybody. Like, if anything happens, whether you decide to get married or you don't, you need to be able to support yourself one way or another. And just, the education's the only thing I can give you as a gift that will kind of help you along the way. And so I kind of really took that to heart. And, naturally, as I'm the oldest sibling, I don't want to disappoint my family or anything like that. So I went into it, and it's honestly not until this year that I'm realizing all these things that, what? I don't know that I did this for me. I did this because it was, I guess, the path of least resistance in terms of, oh, this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like the analogy I use is like when you're going shopping for clothes, if you settle on something that you're like, yeah, I kind of like it, you're going to end up, falling out of love with it rather quickly, as opposed to like, oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with these shoes. I will wear them until the sole has holes in them. It's like one of those situations. I think initially I was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, really excited. And honestly, I'm very proud of like how far I've gotten, and like it's been hard, hard. And I do love helping people, but at the expense of how healthcare is treating patients and providers, it's so hard to support that and be okay with it. So, anyways, I'm kind of like going all over the place here, but yeah, it was really scary kind of thinking these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, am I in the wrong career? Like, what do I do? What else am I good at? I don't actually know. And it didn't come to me right away. I had definitely, obviously I had been kind of like, feeling this for a little bit, but it wasn't until I just started listening to podcasts and like reading self-help books and kind of just getting perspectives from other people. And I remember this so vividly. It was one podcast that asked me four questions. And for the life of me, I can't figure out who it was. I'm still kind of sorting through like my podcast that I've listened to try to find it because I want to give credit where credit's due. But the four questions were, what are you good at? What do you love? What can you be paid for? And what does the world need? So if you find the overlap to those four questions, and then you found your reason for being. So I really found that so helpful. And it kind of just got my wheels turning on like, okay, what else am I good at? What do I love? All those questions. And for the longest time, I have always loved organizing things, organizing my house, my room. When I was little, I would just kind of, what's it called? Rearrange everything because I loved change and I loved like, it just felt like clean and fresh. And I'm learning that I guess it's a coping mechanism. So maybe it's from being, pulled out of Puerto Rico, didn't speak any English and all that. But, anyways, coping mechanism, loved having my space in order. And I would find myself like trying to be like other people who were messy. Like one of my best friends, she had stuff all over her dresser and she just lived like this carefree lifestyle and like no big deal. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be like that. I went home, I messied up my dresser. I looked at it for 5 seconds and I was like, no, I can't do this. And I put everything back in order. So it just felt like innate to me. And that's just my me thing. So my husband had always said, like, oh, you should start a business for organizing. And I kept being like, Andrew, people don't do that. Like, people don't hire organizers. What are you talking about? Sure enough, I started doing a little researching because I was kind of curious on it. And it's nationwide. It's been around, I think, 13 years now. Home Edit and Marie Kondo have really put it on the map, especially with their Netflix shows and kind of like reaching people with like the transformative effects of having like a clean space and a space that functions and not even just like pretty, but like it actually functions for you rather than against you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this is actually a thing. And I think I should do it. And I'm going to do it. And because, in nursing, like I can't really I wouldn't say you can't. It's not impossible. Could I have done this business on the side while working as a nurse? Yes, maybe, but I think I would have only had like, 2 or 3 hours at night to do anything with it. And then at that point, it's like, well, you can't really organize for people at 9 p.m. at night. So,
Right.
yeah, it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to spread my wings fully and just run with it. And this is the time, I'm young and I didn't want to live in regret later in life, being like, well, what if I had done that? Or I should have done that. Rather, hey, let me try this. I can always fall back on my degree if I really need to. But I think it was like the second scariest thing I've ever done in my life and so rewarding. So I started it in March and I've been really busy, which is amazing. I'm really excited. And it's just, I feel like I'm on the right path and I'm helping people just in a different way. And I would literally do this for free. I think to find the answer of like what you want to do in life, if you would do it for free, that's your answer. Because I hate to say it, I really do, but I feel like people just need to be transparent about this. I don't think I could be a nurse for free. It's just so grueling, both mentally, physically. Like there's a lot of layers to it that I hate to say that, but it's just the truth. And I'm not one of those people who like, I don't want to sugarcoat anything and I just want to be honest. And, I don't take my education for granted by any means. And, I worked really hard to get there. And I'm so proud of the people that do find passion in that. And I wish I did, but it's not for me. And I'm just happy I found kind of like what I'm meant to do and like my calling. And I feel like I'm actually talented in something rather than working to be talented at something. Like it's just innate, you know? And I grew up like I did all sorts of sports and I was always okay at them. I was pretty, okay. I was never the star. I wasn't terrible, but just the average Joe, what do they call it? Something, something, but master of none. Jack of all trades, but master of none. That's kind of how I felt. And for once in my life, I'm like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And I don't mean to say that in like a boastful way, just in like I'm really proud of myself. And I think life's too short. I don't think it seems like our generation at least, they're realizing like, hey, life is way too short. Like, I'm not doing something I'm proud of or happy with. Like, I need to change it. And they are going against all norms. Like, I think our parents' generation was more like, hey, you stick to this job and you die with this company for 50 years, which is great. Some people do that and they get really successful, but I think there's a shift in time right now where we're just finally listening to us. And the way I see it, some people might see it as selfish, and I might get hate for that, but I see it as like when's the last time you actually did something for you that you love in your career? Like most of the time, we're always doing something for other people. And I feel like you lose yourself in that. And then that's how burnout happens. That's how, midlife crises happen later. And then you get, maybe you even get to your deathbed and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do with my life? So yeah, there's just a lot with it.
Yeah, there's so much. Thank you for sharing all of that, like the ups and downs. And like, I have so many questions for you, first of
Yeah,
all.
good. I'm so excited. I'm like, I feel like I was all over the place.
Well, I think that's also part of the journey, right? Career flips, career changes, whatever, flips, glides, cartwheels, however you call it. There's never just this straight line to making a decision. And what I also really love about your story, Angelique, that you really touched on is how these pieces of you, like the core of you being the helper, you ultimately want to help people, and how that has been consistent. That's like the golden thread that weaves through everything, where you knew you had to make these decisions to help others, but also yourself. And making those choices based on your values of helping and being available from a very genuine, honest place. I think that that's really important to highlight, because touching on those four questions, for example, the things that someone listening right now may be sitting at their desk, burnt out, they're not sure what they want to do, they know they need a change, but they just don't know what else they're good at. And when we kind of peel away the layers and think, well, what are our values, and helping others can be a great opportunity to think outside the box of, well, how can I do that in a different way? And
Mhm.
I'm so curious, you went to school and you studied in in an industry where your whole family has been, and it sounds like a lot of them, for years and years and years. And so when you made the decision to change and to not do, not be a nurse anymore, and to go all in, this past March 2024, you're like, all right, I'm doing it. What did your family think?
That's a great question because obviously I was really nervous about that. And my people pleasing nature just wouldn't be able to take, if they weren't happy about it. But I am telling you, I got the utmost support and love from them. And they're so excited. I know my mom's very much like, I would call her a worrywart. She was, she just wants the best for us. And she's like, well, like, obviously organizing, you don't know when you're going to have a client. It's a little bit unknown versus like nursing. It's like, hey, I'm going to go to a job Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is. It's a steady, known paycheck. So I think she was a little bit like worried about that, but nonetheless was still like, I'm excited for you. We're excited to support you. Can you post? She's so cute with Instagram. She's like, can you post so my friends can see it? Or can you add them? And I'm like, yeah, of course, that's fine. So I can tell she's excited. And then my dad, he was the one that I was most nervous about, only because growing up, he was the one who really instilled in us, the value of education and, our careers and stuff. But I think he's really come around to realizing like there's so much talent outside of healthcare. Like, I think a lot of people who are in healthcare, they kind of get this label of like, oh, you're smart, which, yes, we work hard, we're smart, whatever. But there's so many brilliant people who, A, don't go to college, who don't need to go to college, or just do different careers. It's not just, healthcare people, engineer, I feel like there's these labels. And yeah, so I was nervous about my dad, but he was so excited because he's really opened up his mind to the idea that, yeah, you can do things in healthcare that are innovative and helpful for others. And I was very, very blessed. So I'm very excited that they're on board with it. Even down to my friends, like I was like, oh, my closest girlfriends, they would tell me like, oh, you're a little crazy. What are you doing? Like, why are you leaving the stability of your, degree that you work so hard for? I didn't get that. Everyone was so excited, and that just fueled and, helped me kind of move forward. So I think it's really nice to have like a great support system to be like cheering you on. And like I've had my closest friends, like I treat them like VIP, but in the organizing space, but they like actually want to support me, and they're not trying to get free services here and there. They're like, I'm so proud of you. I want to give to your small business, and it's really exciting. So yeah, everyone has so far responded pretty well, which is great.
It's so true. Like to be able to make a decision like this and have the support of people that we love, that love us back, is so powerful. Like it's really, it keeps us going. There's like a nice foundation for us to keep moving forward when we know we have that. When we know someone has our backs. I think
Mhm.
it's like such a big important moment. And I think you know, the thing that you mentioned about your dad, where he had said, make sure financially, like that you have anything that you need to take care and support yourself. And I think a lot of the questions I get from people who are thinking about changing their career, it comes down to two things typically: money and time. And so if you're comfortable with sharing about the money part, like
Mhm.
how were you able to kind of one that inner maybe belief where you're like, I have to have this, I have to have something to fall back on. I have to be able to take care of myself if something happens and kind of put that aside because this is a calculated risk in a way that you took to start your business. And then how do you do it when you're just starting to get clients? Like how did that part work for you?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. So, again, growing up, my parents also instilled the importance of saving. And so I've always been honestly pretty good at, don't get me wrong, I spend, but I've also been very mindful about like pay yourself first, emergency funds. I probably wouldn't have moved forward with such a big decision like this unless I knew, like, hey, if I don't get business for 6 months, it's okay because I have an emergency fund that will support me in the meantime. I do think that helps in the sense that it just takes a little pressure off of you from being like, oh my gosh, if I don't get a client, I can't eat tonight. I can't pay my rent, whatever it is. I don't think you want that. So, in a way, you do want to make a calculated and thoughtful decision. And it also eliminates any sort of, I don't know if I would call it desperation, but I'm not trying to take every client out there just because I want business. I'm trying to find my niche and find my right people. And you choose who you want to work with, and they choose you, right? So it's a personality thing as well, but not everyone's going to be for you, and the vice versa is true. So I also didn't want to come off like overly hungry, like yes, I'm just going to say yes to everything even though that's not my niche. So I do think it's important to have a little bit of kind of like a, not a backup plan, but like, hey, what if I don't get clients as quickly as I'd like? I will say the alternative though, sometimes it fuels some people. If you do well with, having that pressure, kind of like that fire lit under you, like
Right.
maybe that's good for you. For me, I don't do well under like that kind of pressure, and it would hinder me and hold me back from like performing. Um and then to the second part of your question, with clients, I started with social media, reaching out honestly to influencers because I said I wanted to have like a strong social media presence with my business. I was like, okay, well, who better to reach out to than someone who the community like looks up to. So, people that I had followed for a while and like admired. Morally I like what they talk about, what they stand for. And I offered my time in exchange, like, hey, if you honestly enjoyed the work I provided for you and if you feel great about it, by all means, if you could write like a great review and like promote it, that would be so helpful for me. And from that, I got my first client. From there, I got referrals. And then since then, it's just honestly been a word of mouth thing. And then, not to say I don't work for I work for finding business. Like I'm not just sitting here waiting for things to fall in my lap. Like I am putting hard work
Yeah.
into it and trying to reach out for partnerships with realtors, interior designers, you name it. The worst thing you can do is get a no. They say, you ask a question, say, oh no, so I'm sorry. I haven't had that issue yet, but you just got to put yourself out there and ask. And, for me, I'm putting reels out there and people will find me based on like Google, or, hey, I saw you on Instagram from so and so's thing. And I'm like, oh, yay, it's working. So yeah, that's how I've been getting my business so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's how I found you, honestly, like the same way. It just popped up. And one of the most important things is to ask the questions. I think when you're starting out and you're brand new to a scene and an industry, and it can be a little uncomfortable and awkward to like pop into someone's DMs and be like, "Hi, like, would you
Mhm.
talk about this? Like, can we do this? Like, I do this, like, and I honestly, like, I popped into your DMs. That's how this connection was made, but it still is that kind of awkward moment, and I think some people, it holds people back where they're like, well, what do I actually know? Or like, even when I started this podcast, I'm like, I don't have any experience hosting a podcast. I'm not a professional person or career coach, or I don't know the ins and outs of career changes. I literally am just a person going through it. And I want to share the stories. And does that give me any credibility? No, but I'm still going to talk to people.
No, you're crushing it.
Yeah, and I think that's just so important for people listening to hear, how you just like, yeah, I'm just going to message people. I'm just going to look into my local community and just start connecting with people who do things that are aligned with what I do. And
Mhm.
also that you didn't just take on every single client right away. I feel like I wish I would have heard that like 2 years ago when I started furniture. Because when I was like starting this, I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to say yes to any piece of furniture that comes through the door because one, I want to learn. I kind of like, well, I'm curious, I want to learn. But then at the same time, there's the time and energy that you put into each one of those. And
Mhm.
that takes away from something that you could actually be doing and making more money on.
Right.
While it isn't all about money, that money is energy and fuel to keep you going, to keep your dream alive. And so
Yeah.
it's important and necessary. And I think that is something that I definitely learned. And as a people pleaser too, I'm still learning because it's hard to say no to someone, but if they're not a good fit for what you do, having someone else to refer them to is always great, but it is
Yeah.
still hard to sometimes say no.
Oh, for sure. And it is one of those things where I do believe like you close a door or a door gets closed on you, that's because there's a better door that's going to be opened at some point later. And you need to expend your energy in that direction versus focusing on like rejection's hard obviously, but yeah, I do believe that. I also believe nobody knows what they're doing, especially when they're first starting out. So you got to throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, and I really think if you find something that you love that you're doing, your passion just bleeds through and people feel it, they see it. And honestly, I mean, I feel like I have my blinders on. I'm like, I don't care if nobody in the world believed in organizing. I love it. I know how it makes me feel, and I'm going to keep doing it, for myself. And if it helps others, great. I would love to be able to share this with them. So I think if you're so passionate about something, like it'll work out. And if you believe in it, I think, you're going to hit roadblocks, and not to say people don't, like, of course, there's always going to be ups and downs. So yeah, you just got to keep trying and really put yourself out there.
Right, right. Yeah. Just keep trying. Don't let those roadblocks stop you. Stop and think about it and then just keep going. Really rethink. I think it's about rethinking how we make decisions for those next steps because, when we have kind of, and I say in air quotes, a stable job, a stable corporate job, sometimes we don't necessarily have to make decisions. Someone else is telling us what to do and we are just like, okay, we're going to do it
Yeah.
because that is part of the job. And when it's all on us, how we decide to take those next steps requires a little bit of thinking outside the box and doing things a little differently, and how we make those decisions really matters. And I have a random question for you. So something that
Sure.
I've noticed. So with different career flippers, when we start at one thing and then we move to something completely different, there's still these kind of common threads or cookie crumbs, for example, that I like to call because they just are kind of like part of this trail that are always a part of us. Like I mentioned, helping others was something that's very consistent for you. Are there any other skills that you learned while you were either in school or at the job as a nurse practitioner that really help you do what you do now?
I think so. So in nursing, you have to be really compassionate. You have to be a good listener. And honestly, like a lot of the patients, they're scared and they feel like they're not being heard. So being able to communicate that like, hey, I'm here for you and like kind of really focusing on them, I think that translates into organizing because I am working one-on-one with an individual. A lot of the times they're really embarrassed about their space. And I have to say, like, hey, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to be, your mom or the person who is scolding you for a messy room. Like I'm not here for that. I'm here to embrace the challenges together and help you move through this so that you can feel better. So I think in nursing, especially nurse practitioners, I think they get the rep for like being listeners and more empathetic and like, there you have good doctors, bad doctors, good nurse practitioners, bad nurse practitioners. So not to say they're all like that, but I think the reputation we get is like we come from like a more education standpoint and explaining the why behind things. So I do think that's really helped me now in my career, just with leveling and talking to people and just kind of seeing them as a person rather than like, oh, this is a job or this is I'm complicated, whatever they might be thinking that I'm thinking of them. And it's just a no judgment zone. But I would say that would probably be the biggest takeaway I have from nursing in terms of like, my bedside manner. I always did get compliments that I did have really good bedside manner. So I know I was a good nurse. I just didn't feel like I was in the right space.
Right. Right. And that's totally acceptable and normal to be in a role that we're really good at and know that it's not the right place and there's something else that we can do. And
Mhm.
but tell everyone where they can find you, how they can learn from you and hire you.
Yes. So I am on Instagram. My business is called Neatly, but you can find me at Hello Neatly. My website's www.helloneatly.com. I'm really responsive on there. I have lots of before and afters for you to get whether it's, you need a nice visual or, you're just death scrolling and want to look at some stuff. I also put a lot of tips and tricks out there in case maybe financially the investment is you're not ready for it yet, but there's a lot of tips and just advice I give on there as well. If you are local in San Diego and you want to get organizing services, if you mention this podcast, I will give you 10% off your first service. So,
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. It's so good.
thank you. Thank you, Jenny. It was so
Thank
great
you.
chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. Be sure to connect with Angelique using the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's career flip story, share it with a friend who could use a little motivation with their own career pivot. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes. There's new ones every single Thursday. And if you have a minute, leaving a review really helps the show reach more career flippers around the world. If you have a career flip story of your own, I'd love to hear it. Visit thecareerflipper.com to learn more about how to submit your story for a future episode. And if you're looking for someone to speak at your next event about career changes and making that leap, think of me. I love sharing these stories and giving others the courage to take their own first steps. Drop me an email to hello@thecareerflipper.com. Keep going, my friend. You never know where that next step might take you. What's the best that could happen?